broadcast now. Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Canonge. I am here in New York City, and this is the program Chronicles of Confinement Europe. I'm very excited to present this project, the program, because it's an initiative, independent initiative that emerged out of a need to focus on artists that work in performance art, and especially during the time of the pandemic, COVID-19, that the world has been subjected to. For me, it's been a great enterprise to be able to gather all these incredible artists, friends, and put them together in this platform today. And talk about not only their work, but their circumstances, their experiences, their lives, and during confinement. In the same light, we will hear from them how they've been dealing with this issue of confinement, how they've been addressing their work, if they're doing work in this period that questions and hopefully will allow us to reflect, think about what is performance art in the times where our physical bodies are not present in a particular place, in a particular time. We talk about alternatives for the performative. We talk about photo performance, video performance, and now for the past 3 months, Zoom performances. So those are the things I think that we are going to address in this panel. The idea, the notion of corporality, the idea, the notion of somatic presence, and if there is something beyond that. So this is a reflection panel. This is a conference, but it's also more, also a dialogue where we are all going to be involved in the process. I want to welcome all the artists here that are joining us today from different parts, from different countries in Europe. And many of them were born in one place, one country, but live in a different place. So they are as mobile as possible. But now also that is questionable in these times of the pandemic. Can we go somewhere? Can we participate in those conferences? Can we take part in the festivals that allows us to present our work? And our discipline is different than painting, sculpture, or even theater and dance. In that sense, I think we think about our bodies and how we displace from one place to another. So without further ado, I would like to introduce this program, and the artists will be first talking about their work in a short period of time. You will be able to see some images of their work. So I would like to start and welcome our first artist, and then we'll continue through all of them. Later on, we'll come back to the conference panel for a dialogue, and then we will open also the Q&A session with the audience and the people that are joining us today. So I'm going to go and share now my screen. And I would like to invite the our first guest artist, Yelena Myshko from Ukraine and Netherlands.
Hello, so my name is Yelena Myshko and I'm a performance artist, obviously. My background is actually in fashion design and feminist activism, and I've studied gender studies also. I've been a part of a Femin group, which is a topless protest group that also influenced my performance art in the time I was doing it. That brought me back to like the social people of the 60s and 70s, the neo-avant-garde kind of feminist artists, which I would like to work in their footsteps, or at least as an activist, I can relate to that time frame very well. And I mainly work with photography, actually, as a performance artist. I adapted the performalist self-portrait, which was developed by Hannah Wilke in America, actually. And I like this term, and I've also appropriated to develop my own type of photography. That was the first image with the white t-shirt that was part of the performalist self-portraits. And my work is, I always try to be ambiguous and work with ambiguity and try to make people look twice and think about what's going on there. So I really inspired by Joseph Beuys also, and one of the things he said was that thought is also sculpture, and I kind of picked up that in the time of COVID, because I thought, like, okay, well, if thought can be sculpture, also I can just write about a performance. If I can't go somewhere, I can write about it, and I can write that I was in America or in Mexico, whatever. Just by reading it, you can imagine it, and it sort of also happens. So I want to develop newsletters with these stories, performance. So that's one of the thing I was thinking. Also, maybe it could be an oral recording. And another project I'm working on is a hashtag Red Women Are Coming, and it's kind of a fictional feminist movement that builds on the mistakes of previous, like the Guerrilla Girls and the Pussy Riot and the Femin, and tries to go beyond that, but also be completely free, that anybody can edit it. So I want to have a Wikipedia page and a hashtag that anybody can adapt, which I'm already working with a little bit. So that's how I try to work around the the limitations of going somewhere. So the internet provides like really a new frontier for me.
Our next artist will also give us a little bit about their work. Please, thank you, Yelena. And we have Rokko Juhász, who is from Slovakia, but does a lot of work in Hungary. Go ahead, Rokko.
So, hola, ahoy, hi. So I'm actually in Mexico now, stuck because, not only because the coronavirus, I'm partially living here now. So I'm an organizer. My background is poetry, poesia, and performance art. So I'm doing more visual art performance. What I'm showing these two projects. One is both is from Mexico actually. This one from last year from Norogachi. This was the festival called Performance Ir o Morir. I hope the pronunciation was good. And this is kind of prophecy. So before the coronavirus, before the epidemic, so I'm locked or tied to the tree. So I was not able to move. I tried, but I wasn't able to move from that place. The other one I did during the epidemic, and this is an ongoing project called Naked Hiking. The day, 21st of June, is a World Day of Naked Hiking. So I did a video in Bahía de Banderas in Mexico, in the Puerto Vallarta. And this is also kind of end of the road, so it's not possible to go further. As an organizer, because for me it is also very important, I'm organizing Trans Art Communication Performance Art Festival since 1988. So actually this is the second oldest performance art project that is still going on yearly, and it's happening right now. So we are going online from Tenchin Airport runway. In 12 minutes is coming the next live streaming from Slovakia as a first transit communication project in this year. So thank you.
Thank you, Rokko. Thank you. And we continue now with our next guest artist, Daniel Häller, who is connecting from Switzerland.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Daniel. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm from Switzerland, in central Switzerland, the heart of Switzerland. Yes, since a half year, I work in my own bar with a small gallery. But yeah, we have most to close during the lockdown in Switzerland. Yeah, hard time for a start. And I also working as an artist, maybe since 20 years. I work in painting and performance art. Yeah. Now we see one's work from me. That was 2009. This was a small festival in Germany, in Offenburg. I was invited by the art school. Yes, it's 11 years ago. So in this time was SARS active. So there was also a discussion about this virus. and we must wear mask, or yeah, you're not sure to wear more than one mask. And so in Switzerland is now this political discussion. So we have to wear mask or not, or only in public space. And so, yeah, that's so a theme in Switzerland now. Yeah, the second photo, this one, is a newer work for me. I think it's now 2 years ago, called Ghost in the Shell. Was made in Bern, so inspired by the same anime film from Japan. The question is, what is body, what is soul, can exist soul without body? Yeah. Yeah, I do this work with a cord, use colored and sign it me on my skin and also on the floor. Yeah, that's all. That's what I do. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for sharing your work. And I would like to invite now Camilla Graff Jr., who is joining us from Denmark. Hello,
Yes.
Camilla.
Hello, hello there. I'm based in Copenhagen, but right now I'm at the Danish West Coast. So you might be able to hear the wind outside. And for many years I was based in Paris, and then afterwards I was based in Berlin. And then in 2015 I moved back to Copenhagen, also because we got a daughter. And since then I have kept having an international practice, and which then somehow really stopped by. It was a kind of really big surprise when the borders in Denmark closed. And then I have the experience that then after that I have started to work more locally. I haven't really worked online, but I have started to work more with communities, and I already did that somehow, but I have the impression that now it's an open door here in Denmark to work with smaller groups, and that's what I really love, and there's also some funding for doing that. But this photo you see, it's I started very early to work with my diaries. I work with autobiography, and I'm interested in what happens when you share intimate materials with an audience. What kind of transformative potential does it have for me as a performer, and also within the community? How does it open up a discussion, and how can you go more deep into a kind of honesty? So so this project is called Journals, and I have performed it within different communities in different countries, and I work in 4 different languages, but here it's written in Danish, and then I would translate it into the language of the place I'm performing in, and so then in May, since I moved back to Copenhagen, I've had a studio, and my practice really have changed into working in a studio every day. And also the fact of being a mother, it really became my room of my own. And then in May, our studio burned down completely. And I had all my archives, my performance archives in that studio. And I had all my diaries except from 2 diaries, because I didn't use the one I had in my bag in the performance, and also not the one I had by my bed. So now I'm really left with this piece that I'm still performing, and I did a performance in Copenhagen 10 days ago with this diary performance without the diaries. So I think it's really a picture of also of this COVID crisis, and how one also has to restart and dig into dig deep and start to rethink. So now I'm at this small community by the Danish West Coast, and today I'm working on setting up a work here in 2 months.
Thank you so much for connecting from the countryside, and so far the connection is great. Thank you, Camilla. Yes. Now we have Riccardo Matlakas, who's joining us from England, but he is originally from Italy. Go ahead, Riccardo.
Hi guys, can you hear me, hopefully?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Riccardo Matlakas. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I'm based in London, where I'm just based. I usually work internationally, and these few months has been quite local for me, which has been very interesting. Also because I don't touch only the media of performance, but I'm very interested in the material I find. In this case, there was stillness. So on one hand, I decided to work on text. So I'm writing a book, which Hector knows about. So my practice has been silent for a while. I had a shock, as everyone. So after all the movement, international movement, the crazy get the plane and go there and go there and go there stopped, which on one hand was good. I needed that kind of pause. And somehow it happened for many of us. So that was a great deal for me because, you know, I think in a way when we have some challenge, especially when it's such a challenge like a stillness, we had to look inside ourselves so much. So I found myself really exploring and digging, and I'm still doing it. The photo you see there, that was in Jordan, in Amman, where I developed 2 performances. This is self-decipher. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I just sent 4 pictures to Hector. So I'm kind of saying, okay, you chose that. So this is self-decipher. Here I work with the School of Mosaic of Madaba. And they helped me install on my body these pieces of stone from Amman. And I went in the Roman amphitheater and slowly took off the pieces of mosaic. Each piece of mosaic was a piece of identity. After a while, people started to help me to take off these pieces of mosaic that would go on a board with some cement, and people would position that. And so to take off the pieces of mosaic in the sense is to reveal the essence. And this is what we are doing a little bit with this Corona. You know, our identity as artists became more of the essence, of my opinion. Somehow we are really touching the core of things. This was in Ukraine, actually, Kharkiv. Someone is from Ukraine there. I was in Kharkiv, invited there in 2018 from the British Council. And I made a sides-made pyjama for a tank, a Second World tank. Kharkiv is not far from the Russian border. As you know, Ukraine and Russia are in conflict. I just wanted to cathartically make the conflict repose, sleep. So I made a pyjama for the tank. There are many things to say about it. Of course, I had a lot of negative reaction and positive reactions as well. But yeah, this work took me a few weeks to do. So I had to sew the pyjama with the help of locals. Luckily, they helped me to sew it, to take measurements and stuff. And then the performance itself lasted for 2 hours. Okay, not needed to say, but I tried to get a permission for it and I didn't get it. So I made myself a permission. So that's to say art has always have a possibility. So I made myself a permission with our digital means, and that worked out until I was going out, I was going away, and then I was starting to have some trouble. But luckily, I think with the energy of good intent, nothing bad can happen. So this is a pajamas party. Yeah, what else? It's enough?
Thank you, Riccardo. Thank you very much for sharing your work. And I would like to invite our next artist, Matey, who is connecting from Spain.
Yes, hello everyone. Really happy to be here with you, even just through the screen. And you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes, okay. To talk briefly about my practice, well, I use 3 verbs that are to walk, to collect, and to displace. So it's mainly how I build my practice. And I'm interested about the relation between us and how we relate in the space. So for many years, I've been experienced space through public space in cities. And more than 10 years ago, I'm more focused in the natural environment. So because I'm interested about relation, mainly my performance is just perfect for me to experience that. But my background is photography, so I use different medias to express my work. And for example, in this work I did last year here in Madrid, it's about I collect from 70 persons. They tell me one experience that it was the longest waiting they have in their life. So I was so surprised that most of people, when you say about waiting, is about the worst experience they had in life. So this makes me think about it now. If I ask them again after all this confinement, well, I guess everybody will talk about this. And this other performance I did, it was a work made with Inger. She's from Norway, Inger Reidun Olsen, and I displayed one stone from Spain, and then I collect another one from Norway. So the first part of the performance we did in public space. She did a trip around the space with the Spanish stone, and I did with the Norway stone. And at the end, another day, of course, this was separate days, we put together the stones and we lifted until we couldn't any longer. So yeah, I think these two works are quite representative of what I had said about to walk, to collect, and to displace elements, and how I create with these 3 actions. I hope to create new relation to everything, to ourselves and to the environment. Sorry, because my cat is just yes. So
thank you. No, we have a participant there. Yeah, it's nice. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. We'll continue now. I would like to invite Vaida Tamoševičiūtė. I don't know if I said it correctly. Her last name?
Correctly.
I did. Okay. From Lithuania.
Hello, everyone. So my background is in painting, and visual aspect of my work is important, but even more important is to reflect inner state, tension, ache, stress, or anxiety through action, to see what I'm not able to express in words or in other medium. That's how performance art and body became a most important tool for me. Since the very beginning, working in this medium, I started to create from inner pain across some mental or physical border, was a ritual of purification and acceptance of myself for who I am. I think I think I still do the same. Themes and urges is changing, but looking from a side, I think what I do is trying to find my own reality and to feel my real self, to be worth being and explore universal reasons of these feelings. I question the term of normality, self-harm, gender roles, and individuals' place in society, and most recent in these works which you see also maternity. Since when I became pregnant in 2016, it immediately came into my work. It affected not only themes, but also methods of work, going through mental and physical transformations of the body and self. I was seeking for methods to get that self back or get to know that new one, which haven't changed so much on the surface, but the change was magnificent. All aspects of the world I knew before has changed, social, economical, and even urban one. You get to know everything from different angle. So with this series of these works exploring maternity, natural processes of body and complicated states of mind through simple maternal routines with breast milk and lullabies, I debate feelings of condemnation and guilt. Again, I raise a question of normality, social exclusion, or
Okay, Vaida, thank you very much. Thank you. And now I would like to welcome Dagmar Glausnitzer-Smith. Dagmar is connecting directly from Germany. Go ahead, Dagmar. You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I have.
Great.
Yeah. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Hector. And I'm in Braunschweig, Germany, which is 200 kilometers south of Berlin. And I feel that Braunschweig here, where I have a big studio since 2010, has become almost like a museum and a gathering place of my objects that I surround myself, that I collect, that people bring to me, that life offers to me. But actually, beyond the pandemic time, since March, my life really takes place internationally, whereby, as all of you and all of us are in a way nomads, going from places to places and presenting our work. My very strong wish and desire is to interact and gather people who are interested in participating in workshops. So I'm offering and inviting people in different countries to participate in workshops, which are between 1 day and 7 days. We have done in previous years co-facilitated workshops in Cyprus, Berlin, Athens, in various other countries, whereby several artists together, international artists, are taking over 1 day within one workshop. So we are offering to workshop participants a large array of methodologies and approaches based on our own work. I have studied in London for over 12 years and lived there and had a fellowship at Kingston University, where I also worked until 2017 as a senior lecturer, and mainly concentrated my work and my practice there in performance art. I feel my studio is a cradle of material object relations. And from time to time, I'm in very close contact, almost an ephemeral conversation with these objects. And that might be just moving them from one place to another. And I'm very interested to research intellectually where the idea might come from, where idea process begins, what it entails, and how I feel I am in the world, and how these relations to being in the world is then transmitted into the performance action or in a performance presentation. I feel also that being in close relationship with materials and what they might be and how they become object, that I have the desire and the urgency in the performative action to become object. And I only recently heard an interview with Kim Suja, and she said, as object, I am the needle. And for me, that was a very, very close call. Thank you.
Thank you, Dagmar. Thank you. Would like to continue with an artist from France, Gilivanka Kedzior. Gilivanka, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. I am based in Toulouse, south of France, and I've been practicing performance art for 10 years now. I work a lot. I'm very interested in communicability, whether because your senses do not allow you to communicate, or either because your environment doesn't allow you to communicate, like social norms or governments, things like this. And all those I relate to endurance and resistance, like situations in where you have to hold for a very long time and still keep the strength to be alive, let's say. So I'm into all those questions, like, and so I am also very much into non-verbal language. So the pandemics for me was quite difficult because I found out I actually need to breathe the same air than the audience and then my peers, because this is when I found out I actually learn the most, when I am amongst my peers. Just by walking beside someone, you can learn lots. And it is the same with the audience by performing. It's like an instant feedback on the work and on the actions I am doing. And I breathe the air and I can get what's going on in the audience and then adapt. It's just like, it's constant adjustment. And this photograph you can see was a performance I did in India, and title is The Slow Agony of the Animal. And I really like this performance. I really enjoyed performing it. And the orange you can see on the ground is actually colored rice. It is rice that has been colored, and I had been carrying it for a long time before I came to that photograph you are seeing now. So I actually like when my body endures the thing in a very, almost in a very literal way, because we are submitted to so much endurance in our everyday life that it's almost a way to make it my own and transcend it, I could say. And I don't know what else I could say about my work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was lucky enough to witness that performance in India. Thank you. Thank you, Gili. And we will continue now. I'd like to invite our next guest artist, Pablo Alvez, art in process, originally from Portugal, but who now resides in Belgium.
Yeah. Thank you, Hector. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
To everyone, a pleasure to be here and to finally see faces I've heard of before. So basically, I've been doing installation and performance art for around 10 years right now, mostly in Belgium, but also elsewhere, mainly in Europe for the time being. And my performance art is very much dedicated to exploring the relation between ethics and aesthetics. So if you look into the history of art, usually you have a very power struggle relation between ethics and aesthetics. And I've been trying to imagine if through performance I could imagine that ethics could actually be an empowerment, a springboard for aesthetic possibilities. And that's what I try to do. Because ethics is a very vast thing, I have to concentrate, and I concentrate mainly on the work of Emmanuel Levinas and totality and infinity in particular. And and I use my performance art basically to test if what Levinas says in his book sounds true to me, if it sounds accurate, you know, issues about sensitivity, about whether the other is indeed the center of gravitation for the same, etc., etc. But also I've been using this kind of exercise that has been lasting for a few years to discover new stuff in performance and to understand what performance means to me. Basically, you are seeing in the photo one of the moments of this long-term performance I'm doing, which is called Phenomenologie de lejos. It's the first time I'm trying to do a long-term, a long-duration performance, which is not a durational performance. I mean, it's not the repetition of an action that takes for half hour. It's actually small performances that I try to put together in a chain. And sometimes I change the order of those smaller performances, and I try to make sense from the whole. And I also try to explore the moments between each performance within that bigger performance. Like, how do I manage the energy of exiting one performance and entering the next performative experience? This resounds to some extent with my attempt to decenter myself. I like to perform in very, you know, dodgy places, and actually perform between the intervals of other performers. You know, I'm using performance also to try to understand how I can be less in the center. You know, it resounds a bit with the concept of allyship, and with the fact that sometimes the conversation that is going on or the problem that is being discussed is not about you. So that's what I've been basically exploring more recently. This is another moment of that same performance where I'm actually trying to discuss how phenomenology as an approach is not appropriate, not the appropriate process to discuss about an erotic relation if such an erotic relation engages at least two people. Voila, that's, I think that's it.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you. And now we'll shift a little bit to the north with Annette Arlander from Finland.
Hello. I'm in Helsinki at the moment, where I'm also born. But the last 2 years I was working in Stockholm. And this spring, before the COVID pandemic, I was in a residency in Johannesburg, South Africa, and was forced to return home from there. But otherwise, I haven't worked internationally with performance art in the sense of being in the festival circuit and performing live, because I perform for the camera. And my current project is called Meetings with Remarkable and Unremarkable Trees, which references a photographer, Thomas Beckenham's book, Remarkable Trees. And the question is, what is remarkable and what is unremarkable? And what you see here is from the gorgeous sculpture park in Nirox in Johannesburg, where I had the possibility to spend a few days at the end before leaving for Helsinki. And this is firethorn Russ. It's a small shrub tree. The sculpture park has magnificent trees and huge sculptures. But I spent a day with this tree, like recording a video every hour from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's a sort of typical way of, I work a lot with time-lapse videos, usually for 1 year. This other work is called With a Maple Tree in Tehtaankatu, or Corona Diary, because when I came home, I had to stay in quarantine. And this is from the yard in the house where I lived. It's a video, so for about 2 months, I stood there for a moment trying to balance on my toes. So you can see in the video, you can see the spring coming and the leaves coming out and so on. But otherwise, these days have not been so difficult for me or for us here, because I work outdoors. And the Finnish policy has been not to invite people to stay indoors, but to invite people not to gather. So I'm allowed to meet all the trees I want. But I cannot go to Stockholm to visit the tree I started to work with there. Maybe I could say, why trees? I think it's, for me, it's an interesting question. Can you perform with a tree? Can a tree perform? How can I understand a creature that is so different from me? If an animal has eyes and a mouth, and I can recognize myself in an animal, but how to perform with a tree? So thank you.
Thank you, Annette. And we continue the presentation of our guest artist. And I would like to welcome Nastya Belova from Russia. And we will have the help of Vladimir Kucheryakov, who will translate and help Nastya in her presentation.
Всем здравствуйте. Я извиняюсь, что за мой английский. Благодарю Владимира за перевод.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for my bad English, and I thank you, Vladimir, for your help.
Перформансом я занимаюсь с 2013 года. Это уже как 7 лет.
I've been doing performance art for 7 years already.
7 лет для меня знаковая, символическая цифра, потому что это как цикл возраста развития ребенка, человека или человека.
7 years, 7 is a symbolic number for me, because this is like a number in the development of a child.
То есть я развиваюсь вместе с искусством и направляю, и стараюсь направить его в созидательное русло.
So like a child, I develop myself with the art, and I use this art for the creative purpose.
В своих работах я чаще исследую личность и единство, и как с помощью интуиции направлять человеческий дух, развивая сознание.
So in my work, I deal with identity and equality, and how to develop your spirit and the consciousness.
Апеллирую к проблемам утраты памяти, тайным знаниям и исследую, какова историческая перспектива подхода.
So I appeal to the problem of the memory loss, of the mystic knowledge. И повтори, что еще? Последнее.
Да, какова историческая перспектива подхода?
And what is the historic perspective of the approach?
На данной фотографии это большой проект, который состоит из 3 частей, 2 из которых я уже сделала.
In this photo, you can see part of a big project which has 3 parts, and I've already done 2 parts.
Эта работа, которая представлена на этой фотографии, она состоит из нескольких действий, которые основываются на истории моей бабушки.
This work consists of several actions based on some story of my grandmother.
Как-то она мне сказала, когда я была маленькой, чтобы я сложила из спичек слово «Ленин». И потом из этих же спичек я сложила 3 шестерки.
So when I was a little girl, one day my grandmother told me, take some matches and put the surname Lenin from them. And then, using the same matches, you can make the number 666.
Об этом еще пишется в Евангелии. Я об этом узнала недавно, когда рассказывала о своей работе другим критикам и искусствоведам.
So I knew when I was talking about this work to some historians and cultural specialists, I knew that the same thing was written in the Bible about this number 666.
Эту работу я делала у разных памятников Ленина и чувствовала разную атмосферу присутствия, и я чувствовала, что я нахожусь не только здесь и сейчас, но и в прошлом, и в будущем.
So I did this work at several monuments to Lenin. That's why I felt the presence of the past and the present at the same time, this connection.
Молодые люди, которые катались на скейтах, когда... я вообще другой, окей. Тогда... ну, в общем, договорим до этой работы сейчас. Это первая часть. Вторая часть была прогулка, и прогулка с Ильичом. И третья часть еще не сделана, она в моих планах. Это сделать тоже перформанс у памятника архитектуры, который находится на берегу реки, где маленький островок. И это моя цель, как бы сейчас, во время пандемии, когда очень многие...
Давай на паузу.
Да, окей.
So, this work consists of 3 parts. In the first part, Nastya burns the matches with the surname Lenin and the number 666. In the second part, which is called a promenade with Lenin, she just walks around and wearing this red dress, and people watch her and they make a video, etc. So she's done these 2 parts. And the third part is going to be at the river bank near some monument, and she's going to talk about this. Продолжай про третью часть.
То есть третья часть будет заключаться вопросом, то, что сейчас встает вопрос, как мне кажется, о трансформации коммунизма.
So right now she thinks that there is an issue of communism transformation.
И когда я буду делать следующую свою работу, я думаю, что все времена соединяться, и так как времени не существует, и я надеюсь,
So in
что...
her next part, she will deal with the future. So three tenses will unite: the past, the present, and the future.
Okay. Okay.
И
Thank you, Nastya, for introducing your work and talking about this involving project. We'll come back later on a little bit more to talk about in detail. I would like to welcome now Gabi Bila-Günther, originally from Romania, but who has been living in Germany for many years. Go ahead, Gabi.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Gabi. Performance name is actually Lady Gabi. I was born in Romania. I grew up in Australia, and since a long time I've lived and been based in Berlin. And I started with performance art. Excuse me? I started with performance art about 10 years ago or so, and I actually came into performance art through spoken word. I began as a spoken word poet and wanted to do more than just stand on stage and perform to a microphone. So I started to include a lot of performative elements and props and sounds and images. And slowly, since about 10 years or so, I've been kind of transforming spoken word or putting spoken word into performance art. Since I moved around so much, since I migrated as a child from Romania into Australia, which was a completely different culture shock for me, I've been dealing with identity, I've been dealing with misplacement, and I've been dealing with Sehnsucht and misplacement. Basically, because I always felt like I haven't really belonged. I didn't belong in Romania. When I went back to visit, I didn't belong in Australia since I didn't grow up there. It was a completely foreign culture to me. So I've always felt like a misfit. So this is what I deal with in my performance. I do a lot of site-specific public intervention performances. But since the lockdown, actually I've been performing at home. Since I was supposed to do a 1-month performance residency in Ghana and was invited to a performance festival in June in LA, I couldn't go. So I was just thought, okay, I'll just start performing at home. I use a lot of feminine objects in my performances to make noise with. I'm a feminist performer as well that deals with gender politics, the more normative gaze in performance art, and many female identity kind of issues, motherhood as well, equality, gender equality, all that sort of, all those subjects. So I've actually was happy because I thought, wow, I can use all my kitchen objects that I haven't actually, that I used to use on stage. I can use at home, in front of a computer, in front of Zoom, in front of my phone. And I was lucky enough to be asked to be part of online performance festivals or video performance festivals. So I started experimenting, performing in front of my phone, performing through Zoom, internationally as well, with 4 or 5 different projects I've done. So I've been really, really busy. And then I started taking photographs of me before, after performances. So I saw art and performance in everything I did. Even cooking became a performance for me, or a sound performance or video. I used my balcony as my stage. We're lucky enough, we have a small garden in the south of Berlin. So we did a lot of the lockdown there. And so I was basically taking photographs and performative photographs in the nature, in the garden. So everything that I was doing during the lockdown, I was actually involving in my performative style. And I have been learning a lot, I must say. Last week I performed for the Thessaloniki Queer Festival through Instagram. So pretty much in front of my phone, having no idea how the audience will react or what's happening, because yeah, it's just a small phone. I couldn't really see the comments coming up. So it's been a very creative, very experimental time for me, and have been using a lot of objects that I normally use on stage or in spaces, such as feminine objects such as hairbrush, soap, water, bubbles, earth, plants, kitchen objects, cooking tools, and I turn them into noise machines. With contact mics I work, so I make my own sounds during my performance. And yeah, so it's been a very, very fruitful experience for me, I must say. And I was sad not to be able to go on my 1 month performance residency in Ghana. That was the saddest bit, because I've been preparing for this for a whole year, putting the proposal, they accepted me, it was all happening. Same with the LA project. Also spoke to the curator on the phone so many times, and then boom, nothing. Yeah, but I've been able to actually perform to a very small social distance sort of gallery space through friends. So I just feel like I've been just as busy as I have been before, and experimenting even more and enjoying it, being at home as well. I've seen this as an artistic residency at home.
Well said. Thank you, Gavi. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would like to continue with Pierre Stair from England. Go ahead, Pierre.
Hello, how's it going? Yeah, my name's Pierre Starr, actually.
Starr, sorry.
I'm a Liverpool-based artist with a practice that's obviously situated in performance. And my first language was actually British Sign Language, as both of my parents are actually profoundly deaf. So I learnt to sign before I learnt to speak, and I feel like this very much influenced my performance art practice, because my parents and I had to be in the same place at the same time in order to communicate with one another. And I very often experienced kind of walking down the street with my mum or my father, and people would be very captivated by our involuntary performance where we were communicating with each other in the street. So I feel like this has been very much the essence of where my performance practice sort of began. My previous works have explored my experience of growing up as a hearing individual in a predominantly silent household. This particular work that you can see on the screen now is basically a performance that I did during coronavirus. And the work is titled Empty. And this particular piece was an online performance, and it basically explored my personal experiences of deprivation, oppression, and survival from the perspective of a child of deaf adults growing up in 1980s Britain. The work basically provided a glimpse into the work of an oppressed and marginalised family, being my own, who as a result of the barriers which they'd faced and the lack of employment opportunities found themselves consumed by poverty and struggling to survive. So Empty really shared the experience of me being a child sat at the dinner table with nothing to eat but gravy because my parents weren't able to get a job because they weren't given one within society. So this is kind of an example of my work that I explore. My work has also sort of explored the territory which I occupy between the deaf and hearing worlds, and critiques sort of intersectionality in the broader social and political contexts. And I've highlighted the restrictive nature of the institution, institutional boundaries, oppression, and the spaces between myself and other. I've also performed works exploring my sexuality as a non-binary queer and what it actually means to navigate heteronormative spaces. And this particular piece that you're seeing here was performed just last weekend, and it was called Invisible. And this was a 12-hour durational work that explored what it actually meant to be visible as a queer couple in the heteronormative world. Myself and Nicholas Ball, who were part of this work, we explored in response to a series of instances in which we both noticed that we felt uncomfortable while expressing affection towards one another in public spaces. And according to YouGov, a survey of 5,000 LGBTQ plus people across the UK carried out by Stonewall found that 58% of gay men said they felt uncomfortable walking down the street holding their partner's hands. And since COVID-19, we experienced this sense of sanctuary within our home, sheltered from heteronormativity. And we were able to encounter this unique opportunity to experience what it actually may be like to live day to day without worrying about the sharing of our affection. And as obviously lockdown measures are now loosened, we are aware that we are going to soon be required to leave this sanctuary of our home and re-enter the heteronormative space. So we felt it would be really interesting to bring people into our space, and through the performative action of a durational embrace, we were able to share our affection and love for one another openly and allow the heteronormative gaze in. And that was our defiant reclamation of space. And we seek to make our fight for emancipation visible. So aside from my performance artwork, I'm also the founder of a platform called Drip Liverpool, which is an artist-led DIY platform facilitating the exploration and development of live art in Liverpool and beyond. And through Drip, I've established an event called Spill Your Tea, which is an accessible and all-inclusive experimental live art and performance art event that takes place at Constellations in Liverpool's Baltic Triangle. And since August 2019, we've supported and platformed the work of 32 emerging and established artists, both nationally and internationally. And our event generally takes place in physical spaces, but obviously due to coronavirus, we've had to adapt to ensure that we can still support artists. And we currently have an open call where we're presenting an online special of our event. So if you're interested in learning more, please visit our page, Drip Liverpool.
Thank you, Piers, and we'll visit that page. Thank you again. And we continue now, someone from Serbia, Branko Miliskovic. Branko, go ahead, please.
Well, I was born in 1982 in Belgrade, in former Yugoslavia, and I was the last generation of the communists in 1989. After completing the secondary school for architecture, I attended the Faculty of Fine Arts. I studied sculpture. Then I finished my BFA at the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague. And I made my MFA at Hochschule für Bildende in Hamburg, Germany. While I work in the fields of performance art, mono opera, cabaret, radio, film, photography for more than 15 years, and my work had been shown at many places, international art festivals and artists in residences such as Rems European Scenes, Les Halles des Harbeck in Brussels. I've been performing there for 4 years continuously at the Trouble Festival. Then I did the 57 October Saloon in Belgrade, Serbia. Then the Extravagant Bodies at Container in Zagreb. The Live Art Development Agency in London, Circa in Montreal, Yellowfish Festival in Seattle, the Tank York City, and etc. Well, in my art practice, as you can see in the picture, I usually deal with 3 main types of bodies. The first body is the political body, then we have a military body, and then this social body. But then there are a lot of branches deriving from all these 3 bodies. So for instance, social body can also be sexual body, pornographic body, disabled body, and whatever body. My work is usually durational, minimalistic, but very expressive. So I believe in bringing my body during the durational performance to the state of total illumination, so I can become almost extraterrestrial. Well, I work with many types of voices, usually operatic voice, psychological penetration, manipulation, and seduction. I frequently use the historical references, inhabiting and turning them into very expressive images, or shall I call them reminders. And I'm very particularly devoted in staging my durational oratorios. I'm interested in power of desubjectification, social choreography, power of authority, manipulation, social structures, a level of disobedience, groups, masses, demagogy, and many levels of the politics, basically. And for the end of my short presentation, I would say that I don't see my performances only as an experience between the audience and myself, but also as the pictures which are meticulously crafted and engraved in a collective memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Rokko. Thank you. And we will continue now with Marita Isobel Solberg, who is joining us from Norway. Go ahead, Marita.
Okay, sorry, I was muted. So I am Marita and I am in Tromsø, up north in Norway. Do you hear me?
Yes, very well.
I've been based here actually since I finished the Art Academy in Oslo, the National Arts. And from here I've been working all over and staying also with Hector in New York.
Yes.
So staying for some years there, but moving forth and back 3 months in a time. Right now I have a beautiful studio in Tromsø, where I, just before the COVID, I was actually traveling to Finland and to Tallinn, Estonia, doing a performance in a space in Tallinn called Kai, for an artist. Another Norwegian artist had an installation there, and I was going there to make a sound performance. So I am not only a performance artist, I also do installations, and I am a musician and a chanter. And for the last years, I've been mainly working on, let's say, the theme of medicine and how to connect to people and places, and kind of getting under and beyond, you know, the big feelings. I want to go under somewhere and make some impression that kind of gives a resonance and stay in the body for a long time. I'm collecting and growing, like harvesting plants, yeah. So I have this kind of pharmacy in a way, like a pharmacy of many things, not only plants, but also when I kind of, here you see pictures from my pharmacy, one of my projects. I work on, as an artist, I come into the space and I say, hey, how can I be a helper? How can I go in and meet you and help you as an artist with my experience I collected through my life? So that is one of the big projects I do. I try to get into problems. I go under, I even talk to stones. So now I'm making new yoiks and chants for elements for another exhibition. So it's like in between me, people and nature. That is my main thing. I have also collaboration projects, which also is sort of in the theme of medicine or being this helper. I work with alternative genome therapy, where we kind of look at the body and say, how can we change our body in, it's not like doing the genome change, but in the natural sense, how can we change with changing our minds and how we think about what we actually are. A body is consists of, let's say, 10% of human material, and the rest is other bacteria and water and other things. So like how we are thinking about our bodies and try to restart something, and our minds connecting maybe more to the land in a way. I'm also working on a new exhibition now, which is kind of, let's say, it's about how we connect all, but it's about all the elements and the messages they give us. So I'm looking for melodies. I'm looking for kind of knowledge in what's around us, and building up installation where I will do performance every day. So I try to work. Yeah, thank you, Hector. I just want to finish.
Yes, of course.
That in this kind of time we're living in, I see it as a challenge in a way.
Det vet jeg ikke svaret på. Det noe annet jeg kan hjelpe deg med?
And it's not to be a performance artist. I can do it so many ways, also in my local surroundings. And I've been working on ideas how to actually connect with the people around me, like old people and sick people and dying people, to be in the space in between, to be this helper, trying to make things easier, or to help them in some kind of way. So yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. And would like to continue with the artist Manuela Maroli, who's connecting from Italy. Manuela, go ahead, please.
Hi to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. And we can see you too. Go ahead.
Okay, I am Manuela Maroli, and I am from Italy. I am an interdisciplinary artist, and I've been active as body artist since 1999. My background is also poetry. With my work, I explore poetic and visual languages through the body, my main medium of expressive research. I'm working in the field of performance art, action poetry, and extreme body art. And I use photography as an extension and documentary support to my artistic practice. I'm interested in complex topics such as violence, oppression, abuse, diversity, solitude, and social injustice. I am the founder of the collective, artistic collective Virgin Arte, and since 2015, I am the co-founder member of the Other Society with Ramana Häller, my really great friend from Austria. He's a great artist, I really admire him. And through performance art project, I start to collaborate with various artists because to me it's very important to collaborate with others. In this photo, you can see this is invisible, and this is a very enigmatic performance to me because it came to me without think about it. It's like a poem to me. It's like a poem with my body. There are so many different levels you can reflect about this. Maybe I'm invisible for others. Maybe this was a very difficult time to me in Italy because in my city, in my town, sorry, in my town in Turin, it's very, very difficult to perform, to express yourself, to present my work. And for this, I think, okay, I am not invisible. Okay, I am here. I wanna express myself. And also, to me, it's like to give voice to people that are not visible, not only for the art system, but for example, human rights, or maybe woman, or some people, they are discriminated by others. To me, it's very important. This.
Now I would like to welcome Emilia Buriti Sinergasia from Greece. Go ahead, Emilia.
Hello, I am a visual and performance artist, and my work is divided into two areas: body energy and space, and participatory performances. The latter is what I mostly work on. I work outdoors with farmers in their fields, connecting art with agriculture, food, heritage, and local communities in industrial and post-industrial places. The need to do this is because I feel that contemporary people have taken distance from the earth and the cultivated food and oral heritage. I would like to mention that in this photo is from a work that I am doing with body, energy, and space. Is in this field. I am going to speak about my second area of work. I believe that contemporary art should be out from the galleries and also from museums and cities. We should give the opportunity to create new communities, which will include artists, farmers, immigrants, audience, and workers, and also the general public. Here is a performance which I did in Elefsina. It's 20 kilometers west of Athens, and I worked with body and industrial space. This experience, which I have now, gives me the chance to continue creating outdoors participatory performances since 2016. And I see that this work has been growing up from year to year. And the feedback which I have received is very encouraging. Because I am a visual and performance artist with a dance background, especially in Buto performance, all the approach which I have already given creates a dialogue with the energy of the body, space, and time. So the work which I do in the fields or in the industrial space includes bodily dynamics. An example of my work in the fields, working with farmers, someone can see in this performance, which I have already spoken, next week, and the title is Agricultural Imprints in Aspropyrgos. Aspropyrgos is the town where I work. So finally, I would like to say that as a performance artist, I receive the energy of the space, I transform my body through movements, and as I have told you, since 2016, I am working with participatory performances. For me, it's a big shift, this kind of work, because I try to be in my center of myself, but at the same time, to not be isolated. I have noticed very often that because artists, performance artists, are very focused on their body, sometimes we forget the other people. And I mean about people who are not in the area of art. Farmers or workers or people who have another experience in their lives. So for me, it's very important for me, I don't speak up general about performance artists. For me, it is a big step to try to create a dialogue with different groups of society, and to feel each other, and together to create a future which we can have the opportunity to feel and to sense common things. And like that, I can see that we can have a kind of future. And I don't agree about make a division between art and society and local people. So it's about bringing, creating bridges. And for me, like that, I see that we can survive in this planet.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you. Well said. And we'll look at those ideas for survival, especially during these days, in a few minutes. Thank you again. Last but not least, we have Noel Molloy, who's joining us from Ireland. Go ahead, Noel.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, my name's Noel Molloy, and I'm living in the middle of Ireland in a place called Roscommon. When I began performance, my first performance was in 1981 when I was at college. My basis was sculpture, and I had been influenced by the Dadists, and I was checking out the happenings in America and that sort of thing. So it was a natural sort of development to go into performance. So I started performing at college, but there wasn't a culture of performance at that time in the college, in Limerick School of Art and Design. So I sort of dug my own furrow, so to speak, and but Jen, that's like, I couldn't believe it's 39 years ago, but really I have been full-time performing for about 30 years now, and have been traveling internationally, and I've done a lot of performance nationally. This performance called Going Home was with Performance Crossings last year in Prague, and I deal a lot with social issues, and this particular performance was about related to homelessness, which is a big problem here in Ireland at the moment. And I use a lot of props which I make, or which I found. In my sculpture I use found objects. So I have a stock of objects in my studio that I use to make sculpture, and so one feeds off the other. So when I use sound a lot, and I use video, and sometimes I perform for the video, and sometimes I particularly like performing in unusual public spaces and in front of a non-artist audience. And usually at the end, when I finish the performance, there's usually people do relate to the performance, and there's usually a lively discussion at the end of it, which for me is all part of the performance as well. And it's creating a dialogue. The performance, I hope, is creating a dialogue and asking questions related to the subject. At the moment, I am actually working on 4 commissions, sculptural commissions, which has been good during this lockdown. Plus, I am organizing a collaborative performance with some local singers, which will happen at the end of August, hopefully, if we don't have a second wave. And it will take place in what once was an old jail in the town of Roscommon, known as the Old Jail. And it will involve the entire building, which is now a shopping mall plus some apartments. So we will be using the entire building, and the singers, I will be collaborating with the singers. As part of that, well, too, we will be having an exhibition which will involve all of the businesses, the shop store windows throughout the town, and that sort of thing. So again, there'll be a little snippets of performance happening there with singers and with the artists, etc., on the streets of the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we hope, as you said, that we will be able to freely or more freely venture outdoors. Okay, thank you, Noel, again. And with this, we finish the part of the artist presentations to now continue with the conference part of the program. I'm going to share my screen. This is all of us. Here we are. And for those of us, the audience who are seeing, I think it would be best if you put your screen to gallery. In that sense, you can see all of the artists together here on a gallery grid. Thank you all so much for sharing your work in such a compressed, 3-minute time. But I believe that it was important to do this, not only to inform about our work, but also to contextualize many of the topics that we work with. And I see already, I was taking notes, there is so material for a book, actually, in terms of how each one of you approach performance art, whether it is from issues of maternity, family relations, the environment, the physicality, and also questioning the notion of gallery, museum, control performances, and being out there in the public, working in the public sphere, also experimenting with other aspects of the performative, right? What can we do at home? Can we generate a pharmacy like Marita, experimenting with plants? Annette working with the trees, etc. So I would like to open now this second part of our conference conversation session and talk about and address some of the issues that relate to COVID-19, which naturally has affected us all. And I believe, and you will of course share your views on this, there isn't a positive or negative light in terms of your work or what it's doing to you. And now I open the panel, I open the conference for you to share your thoughts. Anyone could begin, and just let me know or unmute yourselves. Go ahead, please. Dagmar, go ahead.
It was really very strange because when the pandemic wasn't at all known and it didn't fill the media yet, Dhaka Backart started a project called BioNetwork, and it started with online interview and online presentations and showing work. And it was really strange because it was a very smooth and heterogenic introduction into the time of reclusion and in the time where we were completely exiled from society. So to encounter and experience this whole idea of flat image and creating a virtual space was very urgent at that moment. So I wanted to say that it really started quite smoothly.
Thank you, Dagmar. Yes, would somebody like to add to that or comment?
Well, I could say something, maybe not as a comment, but just this,
yes,
from an environmental perspective. I was traveling hysterically between, flying between Helsinki and Stockholm, like almost every week, which is unsustainable for the planet and for a human body. And so this enforced staying in place has made me realize that not that I wouldn't like to travel, but to value that when you travel, then there is a reason, and that there must be other ways to connect too. And then, as many people said, to try to work locally. So I understand that it's very much harder for people who are in the international festival circuit. But what happens if somehow there is today I got an invitation to a performance art festival taking place in Helsinki in August on an island. So yes, it's possible to organize things on a smaller scale, which would be very good for our environment too. Just as a sort of brief comment.
Yes, thank you, Annette. Yes, on one hand we have the aspect of traveling, correct? That kind of has put a stop on our presentations, but on the other, like Annette said, and I think going back to the early days of the pandemic back in March, suddenly the world was cleaner according to all the news and reports that we saw, right? The waters, the environment, just the atmosphere. Yeah. In terms of your own practice, was there anything in particular that your respective governments have done to help performance art, to help performance artists?
You see,
go ahead.
Yeah, so the situation, it's not about the performance art, it's about art generally. And to come back to the previous question, I don't believe that we are, as an artist, we are traveling extensively. Yes, we do, but there's so little of us comparing to all these businessmen, to all these tourists, to all these people who just travel constantly all the time and, you know, don't really need. I think two business persons can really make a good dialogue through Zoom, through Skype or whatsoever. But you as an artist, you need to experience going from one spot to another spot. So to say that we are not really experiencing this through Zoom or through online, you know, I cannot really perform through Zoom or through online because I need that travel to, I need that anxiety before traveling, so to make me charged. But to come back to the question, here in Serbia, we had to fight for almost 4 months to get a little subsidies, which is 90,000 dinars, you know, translated to euros is like 750 euros. So for 3 months, 750 euros, yes, you can survive. You cannot live, but you can survive. But we have to fight for 4 months. And in the beginning, they said, okay, we're gonna give 300 bursaries only to the artists that are somehow connected with the contracts with the theaters or with the museums. But to the all other 2,500 freelance artists, they didn't mention anything. So that we had to raise our voices and call a lot. So they gave us the money 2 days before the parliamentary elections. So can you imagine? You know, we wouldn't get the money at all if we didn't fight.
So it could be also more of a political agenda, right?
Enormously political, yes.
Yes. Anyone else would like to share in terms of what's happening in your respective countries with government?
I just wanted to...
Yes, go ahead, Emilia.
Yes, I would like to say that through this situation in COVID-19, it was very strange to see how much people were afraid, and there was a lot of fear. And as an artist, artists are generally sensitive to catch things and with and the feelings and energy, and it was quite weird, all this situation. In my case, I didn't have the need, and I was not happy to create in this time a digital, a virtual work. I was very much, I focused very much in research about participatory performances, body work, and I did a lot of reading, which I didn't have the time before to do it because I was always running, performing, and meeting people. So, in one hand, this was like a time for me to be focused a lot in body work and to do this research.
Thank you, Emilia.
And I would like to mention that in Greece, there is an announcement that artists can have some money, but if you do a virtual work, you will have this amount. If you do a practical work, you don't have this amount. Also, I would like to mention that Greece, it is under a big economical crisis for many years, and many artists don't have papers, and they don't have paper, so they cannot receive any economical support. Just they have to think and to create different ways to have some money. So in my case, I am still waiting to have this economical support for the ministry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, Gabi, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, in Berlin, we've been quite lucky that we got as freelance artists and freelancers in creative spheres. We got money pretty much in the second or third week after the lockdown. Totally easy. I was really quite amazed how good they were about this. All we had to provide is our text file numbers, and of course we had to join in a big queue. Basically, I was like waiting online for about 2 or 3 days, but in the end, the money was in without much bureaucracy. They promised that because we have a lot of creative or freelance artists in Berlin, and as soon as the lockdown happened, everything was closed. So a lot of us had no ways of earning any money. I also work as an artist in schools, therefore the schools were closed. And I must say, I was panicking as well, not knowing how the hell how I'm going to survive. But as soon as the help came from the government, it really made a big difference to me, that I could pay my rent, that I could actually think, okay, for the next 3 months, this money that was given to us was basically was meant to last for 3 months. So I was lucky, and I was happy that we have been given that opportunity in order to still create, in order not to panic, in order not to be thrown out of our studios and our homes. But at the same time, so many people take advantage of this as well. Like, for example, after 8 years, in April, I got my studio that I have to get out by the end of July. I got 3 months notice to leave. And I was asking them what's going on, and they were basically saying, well, we don't have, it's because of Corona, the space, I mean, the building where my studio is. And I don't believe that, but I think they're just using the Corona in order to get us all out, because we've been there such a long time. We're still paying rent from, say, 8 years ago. And I think they all want to get us out so they could renovate and start over and double the rents. So in another way, what's been also happening, a lot of spaces in Berlin, independent spaces, are closing down because they're not surviving this Corona. They're not allowed to open. They're not allowed to have audiences. So in one way, it's a bit sad because there's so many spaces, galleries, and independent places, studios, even though they said, well, we're not going to be kicked out if you can't pay the rent, or if you're broke and you get no business during the Corona time, nobody will be kicked out of their spaces. But it's actually not true. A lot of spaces are closing because they are not surviving this pandemic. The fact that they've been closed down since March and not allowed to open, or allowed to open but very, very restrictive, which I understand. We all understand that, but yeah, it's a bit sad. And
that's the situation,
I just find
I think. Thank you, Gabi. Yes, that you mentioned that it is the situation worldwide. It is the situation with small spaces that are suffering. What's the situation like in England, Piers, Riccardo, that you've been there, in terms of galleries, artists, government, councils?
Cool. Right. In England, as a self-employed, you are eligible to a percentage, 80% of the amount you earned the year before. That means as an artist, usually you don't earn much. So the percentage of 3 months compared the last year was very, very small. But the Arts Council launched fundings for from 500 to 2,500, which many artists got. So you could just pick up how much you need, explain them what you need it for, and you would get the money. I got it quite easily. So that wasn't a problem. Actually, yeah, I thought it was even strange that this happened. So there were a few possibilities. Also, there is another place, it's called AN Magazine. The AN Magazine worked in partnership with Arts Council. So they also launched some fundings for the artists. So somehow I saw it positively, although I have all my concerns about homeless and, the stay home thing and this homeless in the street, and it's contradictory. But yeah, about fundings, I think it was quite fair in a way.
Thank you. And Rokko, you wanted to add something to that, and then we'll have Marita also sharing her thoughts.
Yeah. So in Slovakia, that's only what I know, that the foundation was not working during the pandemic. But very quickly, I think in March, they did a Zoom meeting and started to give scholarships for artists. So this is what happened in Slovakia, what I know about. The other thing is that what happened with me as an organizer, I was thinking about to give possibility for artists during this pandemic, and we started to do live streaming. It means that performances, real performances without the audience, and was live streaming. It means they take a risk and did it as a performance, but for camera. So this is what actually going on today and tomorrow. And personally, as an artist, I was trying the do performance for camera, or started a new series to say something about days of the world, what was the naked hiking, and working with my own private archive. So it's
so we are finding ways of dealing with some of the impossibilities that COVID has imposed on us, right? Go ahead, Marita, you wanted to say something.
Yeah,
thank you, Rokko.
I was actually thinking before the UK kind of thing came up, but in Norway it's same as in UK. The first thing was that you get your money, like 80%. If you have earned a lot, you get money, but many artists, they don't earn that much. So now they came with this new kind of thing from the culture fund that you can get grant. You just apply, and if you earn less than like there is a certain amount of money, you can apply for 100,000 Norwegian kroner, so let's say around $11,000, something like that. And there are many of those grants to get. And I've been very lucky because like last year I got 3 years grant, working grant. So I've been paid every month, and I could stay home and work during the corona without any worrying, actually, even though it's not like a high amount of money. It's enough to cover all my bills. So I was really lucky.
Thank you. And Anna, what's the situation in Spain? Go ahead, please.
Well, Spain normally doesn't work well in this foundation. So actually depends which part of Spain has different kind of. I will talk about Madrid, that is where I live. And from the ministry, the cultural ministry, they open a call that they will buy the works. So for performance artists, not so easy to get into that. And actually they make this foundation for the artists, but also for the galleries. So at the end, after 4 months, waiting for this to resolve, mostly it was for the galleries, not for the artists. And there were 2 more helps from private foundation. And one is BEGAP, which is from visual artists. So in this case, you only have to write them and say, okay, I need the money. And they give 100 helps of 2,500 euros for each. But actually, you know, they give the money to people that actually they don't really need. And for me, I was so disappointed because actually I think also the artists need to be honest to ask for this money, because many artists, they don't live from their art, you know. So if you have another work, if you earn your money from teaching or whatever, and you keep this work during the pandemic, why you are asking for this? I mean, this will be for the artists that we only have our earning, the living money from the art, you know. So in Spain, you know, I don't know in your countries, but in Spain, it's really difficult to get money because always is, you know, I don't know how to say, está dado a mano, a dedo, se diría en español, ¿no?
It is pointed to someone who will get it, yeah.
So it's actually, it's like, okay, I will try, but normally it's always the same names that they get the money. So it's really, really, really hard.
Yeah. Good that you mentioned that, Anna, that, you know, all of us work, we have double works or sometimes, you know, triple works, right? So we work as artists, but we also work as teaching artists, or we tend galleries, or the artist is always doing something in addition to their own work. And that, I think, has, as you said, Anna, has made many governments, well, you know, they have other jobs anyway, they will get some money from there. But let's hear from Nastya, because she does work as a teaching artist as well, but she teaches kids in Russia. Go ahead, Vladimir, or go ahead, Nastya.
Yeah, okay.
Ну, в России правительство совершенно ничего никому, художникам не выделяло.
So no Russian artists received any support, financial support.
Была организованная группа художников, которые готовили письмо в правительство, чтобы попросить о какой-то помощи, о каких-то грантах, но они заранее были готовы на негативный результат, на отрицательный.
So there was an organized group of Russian artists who prepared a letter for the government asking for grants, but they were expecting a negative result at the very beginning.
И несколько групп художников организовали группы в социальных сетях, чтобы продавать небольшие работы художников, такие как живопись, графика или коллаж, за совершенно маленькие деньги и на специальных условиях. Это как бы между собой мы продавали работы.
So several artists created groups in social media like Facebook, where they sold their works just for some small amount of money between themselves, just to support each other.
Перформанс, естественно, совершенно никак не... Артистам перформанса никак не платили. То есть нужно делать...
So naturally, in this respect, a performance artist has no ways to gain some money because he can't sell a material object.
Мне повезло, что я перед карантином устроилась на работу. Я преподаю у детей, и мне удержали зарплату. И на это я как-то выжила. И я записываю онлайн-уроки для детей сейчас.
So I was lucky enough to get a job as a teacher at school for children right before the quarantine. So I have this salary and I give classes and I record some online classes for children.
Right now.
Thank you, Nastya. Yes, and which brings us to the next point, perhaps, to this idea of, okay, so how do we move forward? Some countries are getting some countries are getting the support from the government, some others are not. How do you see performance art morphing, developing, changing in the next few years as a result of this, of the pandemic? Camilla, would you like to share your thoughts, please? Go ahead.
Yes. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, what I mentioned also in my presentation, what I find very positive right now, it is that, so in Denmark, you can gather 50 persons. And this means that you can actually gather a performance community. And also because now they're looking for ways to support the artist in new ways. And then there's this summer package where I think it will be much more easy to get funding for performance art than in general, because the Arts Council can be very conservative or classical what concerns performance art. But I think here there's actually this possibility of they ask you to invent new spaces, and I think, and it's not such a classical selection because you have to reinvent it. And that I find very positive.
Thank you, thank you. Vaida, how do you see yourself in the next few years doing performance art? What would happen, do you think?
In 2 years, it's very difficult to plan now anything. It's during this situation when many things were cancelled. I had this probably a problem of planning, as you don't know anything, and coming back to support thing is in this situation I'm lucky having full-time job, so I was able to survive, but with being mother and with closed childcare system, when I really find difficult to find time, and space and mental space also to create something. So now trying just to not to plan too far, but doing what's possible now. And in Lithuania now it's also open to gather small communities. So little by little getting support also from Culture Council. We're just trying to plan little steps, not 2 years ahead.
Thank you, thank you. And Yelena, what would you share with us regarding that point?
Well, for me, I'm actually in a luxury position, kind of, and I say geluk bij ongeluk, which translates to luck at unfortune. So I'm mentally ill, and I have a social security, or like what's it called? Like you get benefits to support me because I'm ill. So I can't work. So that's the problem, and that was a knowledge that I can't work, and I'm supported. I can be an artist as long as I don't earn any money, which is perfect, of course, to be an artist. So I have like a lifelong residency if I want. So I'm in a very luxury position to be to be in Europe, to have this opportunity, because if I would live in Ukraine and the same thing happened to me there, I would be very disadvantaged and would have no future whatsoever. Yeah, in terms of like what I see for the future of performance, I'm very actually, unlike some other people in this group, I'm very hopeful and very enthusiastic about the opportunity of the internet for performance. Maybe because I'm always enthusiastic about some kind of movement and new things that you can, new frontiers that you can try. But also I pretty much live behind the computer since I'm 16. So for me, it's a very natural transition into the internet, and it's kind of easier that it's now being adapted by more people so now it's I'm hoping that it will be more normal to have a meeting with a curator, for example, instead of like going to another country to meet someone. Because like one time a few years ago I went to Germany to meet a curator, and it took me the whole day, this trip, and for a talk of 30 minutes. So, and why do you have to put so much effort? I mean, if you can talk online and you have the same experience pretty much. So,
your transition to the virtual
yes.
performative space was not as perhaps hard as for other artists, correct?
Yeah, for me it was very easy, and I'm really I see why it's a problem also, because I mean we're very tactical, so we have to have, I agree, we have to have experience, like physical experiences and like travel and everything, but also on the other hand, I think this limiting it to the virtual realm might be might give new opportunities, might make things easier. Like for example, I'm working with a hashtag right now, one of my projects, and yeah, it's just something that everybody can join in.
Thank you.
But the other problem is that it has to be found. So the problem is to popularize it, like to make it discover. So let other people discover you somehow. But then how do you do it? Because we know in the normal world, or like in the world of advertising, we know you can pay for ads and stuff, but or maybe Facebook ads. But yeah, how can you use like
yes, we can probably use all the instruments that we can find in social media. Thank you. We have Pablo, and this relates to the next question: is if we have done virtual performance, and you, I believe from what you've been sharing with us, you have. How did you feel? Obviously, do you find the differences? Go ahead, Pablo. Unmute yourself, please.
Oh, sorry.
Can you
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Hector. Look, to be honest, I was very skeptical at the beginning because I never had done online performances. I did, performance before a video camera, and, that for me is performance. You don't have absolutely to be there. It's clear for me what is performance, or fairly clear what is performance and what is not. But yeah, during the confinement, I was very skeptical, and I resisted to perform, basically because I was seeing many artists wanting to give online their stuff without really caring about knowing what people are available to receive or not. So it was a kind of a one-way street. And then there's also what Emilia was saying that's very sensible, which is we sometimes forget, our body is very present and we forget about the other bodies. And with so much suffering going on that you are hearing about and people living in dire conditions, it was very hard to ignore that. Well, eventually I gave in, and I did participate on I did give my first online performance, and I was so against it, and actually it came as a surprise and a learning experience, because it kind of enhanced my responsibility towards the public. For instance, I had to be aware that people could not use their stereoscopical vision. They were kind of seeing me in this aquarium, and I had to ensure that I was within their vision, the area of vision, and to some extent I had to compensate for the lack of energy, for the lack of smell, of sweat, of noise, of the noise of the paper, for instance. So I had to compensate. This was an interesting experience, also because in the meantime I was performing at the request of a collectivity the other side of the world. So a friend of mine in Brussels went in the Zoom session, and she said, I didn't know where you were. You could be somewhere else, elsewhere in the world. And she was seeing people from different colors and different habits, etc. And it was a very interesting experience. And then also, like this habit we have on Zoom to chat, which sometimes is less frequent after a performance, a live performance happens. That's very interesting. So to be honest, it's not like I want to do online performances for the rest of my life. Maybe having 2 or 3 experiences is enough, but doing performance online and feeling how different it is from direct performance makes you, it makes clearer what is and what is not performance. Like, it will enhance the visual part, it will enhance the spectatorship, and you will have more viewers than witnesses. And the interaction while you are performing is clearly lesser than in normal circumstances. Yeah.
Thank you, Pablo. Piers, you've done performances as you showed your work. How did it feel?
Oh, I could tell you a lot of things about that.
Yeah, in 2 minutes.
To be honest, the first...
Yeah, I was just kidding.
So the first...
by the way, we extended a little bit. I hope you don't mind. We extended the session a little bit. So go ahead.
Yeah. The first performance that I did was a piece called Reflections, which commissioned to make this piece of work by a small gallery in my area, and yeah, for me this was the first time that actually I had performed, you know, through live stream. I'd done performances to camera. I had experience of this, but to actually live stream a performance was a very different sort of feel. And I think for me, there was this extra level of responsibility to have to consider. So for instance, I wanted to ensure that what was in the picture was, I was thinking about the composition of what I wanted to be seen. And this, very often as a performance artist, you're very often just given a space and told that this is the space you're going to work in. So you don't really have the same sort of, I suppose, the opportunity to really consider your composition, what is happening around you. So I think for me, this was quite interesting to suddenly be considering these elements also, as well as the performance itself, and then using technology such as OBS and Restream, things that I'd never used before, and then thinking about how these were going then to stream across multiple channels to reach multiple different audiences all at the same time. And then there's the feeling of actually being in front of the camera and realizing that actually it's a very lonely feeling to be performing without a physical audience and not being aware of whether there is even an audience present with you watching the performance. So I guess there's all these kind of new experiences that kind of then sort of become, I guess, a part of that experience, I guess. So for me, I think I've definitely learned a lot through that process. I've learned lots about new technologies that I didn't know before, and that is a really great asset to kind of my.
Thank you, Piers. Yes, absolutely. It is learning a lot. Marita, go ahead. You wanted to share, I think, some thoughts on that.
Yes. Lately, I've been seeing this kind of big boom of musical concerts online, where they put up a number and they actually earn a lot of money from people that just whips them some money. They just give money to them, so they gather a lot of money. In the performance scene and music, I've been into both of them, and the screen is a different kind of setting, and it's so different from being present in a space. Everything cannot be presented in a good way on a screen, but there are many possibilities to test out different things, and I think also there's so many different kinds of performance artists, and some think it's very okay to work with the screen as it is and develop that, but I believe in a future also where everything is possible, but there is nothing that, from, like, if I can say what I mean, it's being present with people, that I can be so close that they can smell me. I think that is very important. But that's how I see it, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And we're talking about the senses, right? We're talking about the 5 senses. Plus, if there is a 6th sense to it, added, absolutely. And one of the things that we're missing, of course, is the smell, right? The smell of bodies, the smell of elements, the smell of materials. Manuela, you've been doing some work. I've been following you on Facebook of performances, presentations. So can you talk briefly about that sense of missing aspects of sensorial aspects in performance art?
Absolutely, because to me it's so important to meet people, to stay with the audience, and touching her. I think I don't like too much to do performance online, because I really need the contact directly with people. And now I am focused on photography, on photo performance. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, photo performance, video performance, and to a certain extent also virtual performance, which is not new, right? What we saw recently was the sense of the explosion of Zoom performances. We're getting close to the final part of the final of our program, the conference. There are no questions yet from the audience. On the contrary, they're saying thank you for sharing all this valuable information. Thank you for sharing all this information about countries and resources, etc., etc. I have a question in turn. Has any one of you fallen ill due to COVID? Did you go through that experience? Did you get sick?
No, for luck.
No. Okay, no, okay. Yes, I think Europe in that sense was, the scenario was a little bit different than in the US. I myself got ill. I was with COVID at the end of March, April. And so were many artists, incredibly enough, many performance artists in New York City fell ill. Just before that, you know, it was the mid-March and we were still going out to performances, doing performances, and it was mid-March in the US. And I think that's one of the things that affected, that many of us fell ill. And some of them are, in fact, recovering even now. So and that's, I think, just a reflection of what and how governments have managed to contain the pandemic in various countries and in the US, where right now we are also, New York is not, but other states are to the top, you know, of the infection and contagion. Yes, okay, so there are many things. There's no particular question in our Q&A for any one artist. If you like to address something before we go to the end of our conference, please feel free to share, comment, or maybe ask another artist. We are all now in full participating mode.
Yeah, could I say something?
Yes, Rokko, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say about the online performances that we have something between artist and audience when we do online performance, and this is what is missing. So for me, it is not a real performance art. It is we're using something, some media or technical stuff, what transmitting our thoughts or our what we want to say. So this is quite important question for me. I have to think about also. And one more thing, just a comment, that photo performance and video performance, what does it mean? So for me, video performance, this is more documentation about the performance or video art. And that the same is the photo performance. But during the workshops, I using, for example, photo performance as for teaching what is performance art, and this is very, very useful. But to explain what is performance art during the photo, doing photo performances.
Thank you.
Like that.
Thank you, Rokko. Thank you. Okay, thank you. On those words, I'm going to shift and I'm going to ask you to think about only a couple of sentences. It cannot go more than that, no longer. I'm going to switch to what I call windows of, for me it was windows through Europe or to Europe, but I think it's windows to this world that we want to somehow go back. And so think about just 2 sentences that you like to express as you were looking from your window outside into the world, which now we're going to share among ourselves and also with our audience. So here we go. It will go also by name. It's a performance in a way. It's a performative way of ending our program. 1 second. And then we'll come back and say the goodbye. Yelena.
Do I have, I'm sorry, I forgot, is it few words or few sentences?
Few words, few sentences,
Words.
not too long.
Well, during COVID, I lost my daughter. I was pregnant and I lost her and I miss her.
Wow. So come back and reach us online during the pandemic. And after we go live again, hopefully.
Yes, now it's stormy weather by me. It's not so blue sky. I think it was an interesting question about the father of performance. But maybe we can also ask us, not what's the future of performer, what kind of performance we will do, what can we do? We are artists, we don't need a gallery, we have open spaces, we can perform everywhere, every time. Yeah.
Camilla, go ahead.
What you see in the very, very background, it's the sea, it's behind this huge amount of sand. And now when we finish, I will go to the sea. It's a very powerful sea. And it helps a lot to stay there 1 hour a day. And it helps to make a new start.
Connect with what Daniel said. My sentence would be, I'm gonna get out anyway.
I was 51 days looking through my window.
Vaida.
I was happy that I have some green spot where I live in. Finally was happy with a place where I live.
Dagmar.
I feel the challenge to address that there is no before and no after, and how can I understand change?
Thank you. Gilivanka.
I think about the future and projects to come that give me hope, like for instance, developing workshops, performance art workshops in the countryside with local French people, since this discipline is still very little known. So this kind of ideas give me hope for the future.
Thank you. Pablo?
Yeah, I was confined for over 3 months. And when I was looking out through this window, I was just thinking, gosh, I need a drink. And I really need to go back to clubs and discotheques, which is actually where I tend to do most of my performance experiments, with masks of different sizes, with different props, dancing on the floor, dancing horizontally. Yeah, I was missing that terribly. I still am actually.
Thank you. Annette?
Sorry. This is the maple tree that I went down to stand with for my quarantine, and then for 2 months after that. I am so grateful for the Finnish government for not putting us to be indoors. Preventing us from meeting other people, yes, but we were allowed to go outdoors all the time. If I would be locked for 1 week indoors, I don't know what I would do. So I'm so impressed by all what you have gone through, those of you who have been forced to be indoors.
Thank you. Nastya?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Я живу на 1-м этаже, и мне совершенно не повезло, потому что у меня плотно зашторены окна.
I live on the ground floor, so I'm not lucky because I have curtains on my windows.
Мне очень не хватало пространства, и я люблю наблюдать за движением жизни, когда смотрю в окно, что что-то происходит, что...
So I really lack space. I really like to watch the things move around when I look out of the window.
Я в детстве любила смотреть в окно, когда уходила мама, я ее ждала, и сейчас я также смотрю с надеждой и жду, когда что-то произойдет, какое-то чудо.
So when I was a little girl, when my mother went to work, I used to stand by the window and look out there for her. So right now I have the same feeling. I look outside and wait for something good to come.
Thank you. Gabi?
Yeah, what you see out of my window is basically the U-Bahn, and during the day I was actually quite lucky. I was hearing a lot of their work, and they were very loud, but it made me happy because it felt like there was life going on, because the U-Bahn stopped also at the time of the lockdown for renovations, so it was dead quiet. I live in an area that's very busy 24/7, so at nighttime the area was really dead quiet, quite scary, quite sort of frightening, because I'm used to always hearing noises, and because I live in the center of Berlin. But during the day I had the pleasure to hear the workers banging, and I had a sound performance for pretty much since 6 o'clock in the morning. It annoyed me, but it made me feel like there was still life going on outside. And also, since during the lockdown, I was happy to be in my garden, therefore exploring space garden and nature. So for my future, I would like to do more of performances involving nature and gardening and trees and plants and that kind of those elements, which I haven't had the time or the opportunities to do before, as I live in cities and I do site specific stuff in parks, I mean in urban environments rather than nature, gardens, forest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
During this 9-hour performance work, I was looking out the window to see that my neighbors were having a party. And as I stood here struggling, I was reminded of the people that were vulnerable and isolated, that weren't able to leave their homes and were struggling due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Thank you. Rokko.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary, over many a quaint curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone only gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, rapping at my chamber door. Only that and nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Marita?
Yeah, I will adapt all the corona situations, and until the world opens again, then I'll come with my magic pharmacy sailboat and pick you up.
Thank you. Manuela?
Yes, this is my window view. I was confinement for 67 days. Sorry, 67 days at home. And I miss a lot my friends. I miss my boyfriend. And now I am free to love, and I am free to perform.
Bravo. Emilia?
It is next to my window, an open air cinema that it works only the summer. So I was looking that this cinema was closed, and I was thinking that, okay, I have just to be patient, although that I was very much annoyed from a kind of a fascist way that we should be inside, and there were a lot of examples of that the police was a kind of aggressive in front of the people who didn't have a permission to go out to buy something. So it was a difficult thing.
Thank you.
And although that it was a hard experience, I think we should be positive and to have an eye and to protect our democratic expressions. This.
Well.
Yes, you know, into everybody's life, a little rain must fall, but from that rainfall comes new growth, and there's always the possibility of some sunshine. So to enjoy the good, we need to experience the bad, but there will always be good times, and there will always be performance.
Thank you. And I'd like to share this image, which was the initiator images of my projects. All these projects that I've been creating after recovering from COVID-19. I remember this image was just a few days after I became fully, I think, feeling better and more alive. So I wanted to share that with you. And I think you've seen this image before. It was in the Chronicles of Confinement open call series as well. So for me, it was the beginning of something new and the challenge of continuing with life, continuing with art, continuing with creating networks, connecting friends, people, becoming closer, although at this moment we are unable to come that close, but we're still close. I want to thank you all.
Thank you
for sharing your windows to our hearts, our windows that here you can see as a mosaic of this particular moment that we are all sharing, and also hopefully will serve as an archive for later on, who knows, 5 years, 10 years from now, to say that we did share something more than art, more than our performance explorations, and that is our humanity. And I really want to thank you for accepting this invitation and for giving your time to the group and to the audience that joined us today. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
close to
Thank
all
you,
of you.
all.
Thank you, Hector.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we will soon meet somewhere in the world.
Yes, let's
And
do
we'll be
that.
together. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Big kiss, abrazos, besos, hugs.
Yes,
Camilla, Vaida, Annette, so wonderful. Daniel, Branko, Noel, Yelena, Nastya, Vladimir, Dagmar, Rokko, Gabi, Gili, Pablo, Manuela, Piers, Riccardo, you're there. Marita, see you in Norway soon, I hope. And Camilla, of course, I want to see that ocean that you mentioned. Have a wonderful evening. A good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
I will continue the afternoon.
All the best.
Take care. Stay safe.
You.
Thank you.
Yes, stay safe.
You too. Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you also to the
Bye-bye.
audience that joined us. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Ciao. Un beso. Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ой, я вроде выйти.
It's shrinking. We're shrinking in numbers. Bye.
Bye, Gabi.
I'm so glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Thank you. So good to
Hang
see
in
you.
there. Stay safe.
I will.
All right. So let's
Bye,
stay in touch.
Manuela.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Until next time.